husband and I struggled with infertility and did 2 failed IVF rounds. Then my sister showed up pregnant, offering to give me the baby, but my husband refused to even discuss it. Then I found out he'd been cheating with her. Hello, Reddit. The past few years of my life have been a roller coaster, and I thought I would share it with you. My husband Alex, 34 millions, and I, Meline, 31 degrees Fahrenheit, have been married for about 5 years now. In the beginning, things were great. We had good jobs, a nice little apartment, and plans for the future. Everything seemed perfect, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. For the past 3 years, we have been trying to have a baby, but nothing has worked. At first, we weren't too worried. We figured it would just take time. Everyone always says, relax, don't stress, and it'll happen when it's meant to. So, we took that advice. We stopped tracking cycles, we went on little vacations, we tried to keep things light and fun. But as the months passed with no positive pregnancy test, that nagging worry started to creep in. Eventually, we decided to see a doctor. They ran all the usual tests and everything came back normal. There was no obvious reason why we weren't getting pregnant. That was almost more frustrating than if they had found something wrong, because it meant we had no clear answers. The doctors just called it unexplained infertility and suggested we keep trying naturally for a bit longer. Well, we tried and tried and tried, and every month I would get my hopes up only to feel crushed when my period arrived. It started to take a toll on me emotionally. I became obsessed. Every twinge in my body made me wonder, could this be it? I tracked my temperature, peed on ovulation strips, and scrolled through fertility forums like a detective looking for clues. It consumed me. Meanwhile, it wasn't just me who was feeling the pressure. Alex, who had always been so patient and supportive, started to show signs of stress too. He hated seeing me so upset every month, and even though he never said it outright, I could tell he was feeling the weight of it all as well. Intimacy started feeling like a chore, which only made things worse. After a year of trying with no success, we decided to take the next step, IVF. We told ourselves that science was on our side, that this would work. I had heard so many stories of couples who struggled for years only to get pregnant with IVF on the first try. I convinced myself that this was the answer, but it wasn't. The first round of IVF was brutal. The injections, the hormones, the endless appointments. It was exhausting. My body was bloated, my emotions were all over the place, and I felt like I was on a roller coaster I couldn't get off. And then after all of that, the embryo transfer failed. It was devastating. I felt like my body had betrayed me. Alex tried to stay strong for me, but I could see the sadness in his eyes too. We didn't know what to do next. Should we try again? Should we take a break? Should we just accept that maybe we weren't meant to have kids? After a few months of processing the failure, we decided to give it one more shot. We scraped together the money, went through all the treatments again, and crossed our fingers. This time, I convinced myself I wouldn't get my hopes up too much. But of course I did. And once again, the transfer failed. At that point, I hit a low I didn't even know was possible. I felt empty, like all the joy had been drained out of me. I started avoiding people and dodging well-meaning relatives who would ask, "So, when are you two having kids?" It was also affecting our marriage in ways I hadn't fully realized. Alex and I started arguing more, not huge fights but little things that built up over time. He hated seeing me so miserable, and I resented that he didn't seem to be as emotionally wrecked as I was. In reality, he was struggling too, but he just processed it differently. We tried therapy, which helped a little, but we were still in a weird limbo. We weren't sure what our next step should be. Should we try another round of IVF? Look into adoption? Or just take a break from it all? About 6 months ago, things started to get weird. Looking back now, I don't know how I didn't notice the shift sooner. Maybe I just didn't want to. Maybe I was so caught up in my own stress and disappointment that I ignored the obvious signs. Alex had been acting different. Not in an outright suspicious way at first, but just enough for me to feel that something was off. He started coming home, later and later, always with some excuse about work, meetings, deadlines, last-minute projects, stuff that seemed reasonable at the time. But then we stopped having sex. Now that might not sound like a big deal for most couples who have been together for a while, but considering we had been desperately trying to have a baby for 3 years, it was unusual. It wasn't just that we weren't having sex, it was that he didn't even seem interested anymore. Before, even when we were stressed, we would at least try. We had scheduled times. Doctor recommended windows where we needed to get busy, and even if it sometimes felt more like a task than something fun, we did it because we wanted a baby. But suddenly, nothing. If I initiated, he would pull away, or say he was too tired, and after a while I stopped trying because rejection after rejection started to hurt. I told myself he was just exhausted. Work had been stressful for him, and after everything we had been through, maybe he was just emotionally drained. I got that. I felt drained too. Still, I tried to talk to him about it. I asked him if something was wrong, if he was feeling okay, if we needed to take a break from all the baby planning just to focus on each other. But he wouldn't open up. He just kept saying that everything was fine, that I was overthinking things, and then out of the blue, my sister Abigail, 27 degrees Fahrenheit, showed up at my door and dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant. I was shocked, but I congratulated her because, well, that's what you do, right? Even though I was dealing with my own infertility struggles, I wasn't about to make her moment about me. But before I could even process it, she said something that completely threw me off. She told me she didn't want the baby. She said it was a one-night stand, that the father wasn't in the picture, and that she wasn't ready to be a mom. And then she said something even more shocking. She was willing to give the baby to me. Just like that, I remember just staring at her, my mind struggling to catch up with what she was saying. I had spent years trying and failing to have a baby, and now here she was offering me one as if it were a simple favor. I didn't know what to say. It was too big, too unexpected. I told her that I needed time to think about it, that I had to talk to Alex. She understood, but she also made it clear that she needed an answer sooner rather than later. That night, when Alex finally came home, I told him everything. I expected him to be shocked. I was still reeling from it myself, but his reaction was strange. He wasn't just shocked, he was immediately against it. He didn't even take a second to think about it. He shut it down completely, saying, "This isn't what I want." I was stunned. I wasn't expecting him to jump up and say yes right away, but I at least thought we could talk about it. This was a possible chance for us to finally have the baby we had been wanting for years. Sure, it wasn't how he had planned, but life rarely goes according to plan, but he wouldn't even discuss it. He was so adamant, so dismissive, and when I pushed, he got defensive. He kept saying things like, "I just don't want to do this, and this isn't the right way." The more he avoided the conversation, the more I started to feel like something else was going on. For the next month, I kept trying to talk to him about it, but every conversation ended in frustration. He either shut down or got irritated. It was like he didn't even want to acknowledge that this was an option. Meanwhile, Abigail was calling me constantly, asking if I had made a decision. I didn't know what to tell her. I was stuck between wanting a baby more than anything and knowing that my husband wasn't on board. The more time passed, the more I started to feel like I didn't even know Alex anymore. His whole attitude had shifted in ways I couldn't understand. It wasn't just about Abigail's offer. It was about everything. He was distant, secretive, and cold. He barely spoke to me when he was home, and when he did, it was short-clipped responses. The warmth we used to have was gone. I started questioning everything. Then one day I got a text from my friend that changed everything. She told me she had seen Alex and Abigail together at a cafe. They weren't sitting like two people having a normal conversation. She said they looked close, too close. She had taken a photo and sent it to me. My hands were shaking when I opened the message. The photo showed Alex and Abigail sitting at a small table in the corner of the cafe. His hand was on hers, and they were leaning in close like they were sharing some private moment. It wasn't outright obvious, like they were kissing or anything. But it was enough to make my stomach drop, enough to make me feel sick. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I stared at the picture for what felt like hours, trying to convince myself that it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe they had run into each other. Maybe Abigail had reached out to talk to him about the baby, and this was just an innocent conversation that happened to look bad. But deep down, I knew. I had known for a while that something wasn't right. This just confirmed it. That night, when Alex came home, I confronted him. I held up my phone, showed him the picture, and asked him point blank what the hell was going on. And you know what? He didn't even try to deny it. He just stood there looking at me with this guilty expression and said, "I'm sorry." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I demanded that he tell me the truth. I wanted to hear him say it. I needed to hear him admit what I already knew in my heart. And he did. He told me everything. He and Abigail had been sleeping together, and the baby was his. I can't even put into words what I felt in that moment. Anger, disbelief, pain so deep I could barely breathe. It wasn't just my husband who had betrayed me. It was my own sister, the person who was supposed to have my back, the person who had stood beside me through years of heartbreak while I struggled to have a baby. And the whole time she had been sleeping with my husband, carrying his child. I lost it. I screamed. I cried. I threw whatever was closest to me. I don't even remember half of what I said, but I know I told him to get out. I told him that I never wanted to see his face again. He tried to apologize, tried to explain, but I didn't care. There was no explanation that could make this okay. I kicked him out of the house that night. After he left, I just sat on the floor, staring at the wall, completely numb. It felt like my whole life had just fallen apart in an instant. The next few days were a blur. Alex kept calling me, sending messages, begging me to talk to him. He told me he loved me, that he had made a mistake, that he had only done it because he couldn't handle the pressure. He said he had felt like a failure after all our struggles with infertility, and Abigail had been there comforting him, and one thing led to another. As if that was supposed to make it better. As if that was supposed to justify what they did. I ignored every single message. I didn't know what to say to Abigail either. She hadn't reached out to me after I found out. And honestly, I didn't know if I could ever face her again. My own sister. The person who was supposed to be my family, who was supposed to support me, had done this to me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I had spent years crying over negative pregnancy tests, wondering why I couldn't have a baby. And all along my own sister had been secretly sleeping with my husband and carrying his child. I felt humiliated, like a fool, like everyone around me had known something I didn't. I kept replaying every moment in my head, wondering how long this had been going on. Had it started when she first told me she was pregnant before that? Had they been laughing behind my back this whole time? I barely ate. I barely slept. I just sat in my house, surrounded by the memories of a life I thought I had, trying to figure out how the hell I was supposed to move forward. But one thing was clear. I was done with both of them, but they weren't done with me. It would have been one thing if Abigail had just accepted what she did and dealt with the fallout. But no, she actually had the audacity to come to me after everything and ask me to still adopt the baby. She wanted me to treat her like a surrogate. She wanted me to act like the past didn't happen. She had spent who knows how long sneaking around with my husband behind my back, and she wanted me to just forget about the betrayal and take in their child, as if it were some sort of twisted consolation prize for everything they put me through. I laughed when she first brought it up. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She was serious. She actually stood in front of me looking frustrated, saying things like, "You wanted a baby, didn't you? This is still your chance to be a mother." As if that was the issue. As if the problem here was just getting a baby and not the fact that it was the result of the two people closest to me, completely destroying my trust. I told her no, and she did not take that well. Suddenly I was the bad guy. Suddenly I was the selfish one. She acted like I was being cruel for refusing to take in the child that was conceived through the worst betrayal of my life. She ran straight to our parents, probably expecting them to take her side, but to my absolute relief, they shut her down real quick. They told her that she needed to take responsibility for her actions, that she had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. They weren't about to cuddle her or make excuses for what she did. That should have been the end of it. But no, things got even worse because Alex also decided that he wasn't going to step up. He was willing to pay child support because, legally he had to. But that was it. He straight up told Abigail that he wasn't going to be in the kid's life, that he didn't want to play daddy, that she was on her own. I know he's a complete jerk. This man ruined our marriage, destroyed my trust, got my sister pregnant, and then when it all came crashing down, he just walked away as if it was nothing. None of it mattered to him. And suddenly, Abigail wasn't so smug anymore. Suddenly she wasn't acting like she had all the power. She wasn't coming to me, telling me to just take the baby and pretending she had the upper hand. No. Now she was crying to me, telling me how hard it was going to be as a single mother. How she didn't know what to do, how she didn't think she could raise this baby alone. And I won't lie, I felt a tinge of satisfaction. Does that make me a bad person? Maybe, but I don't care. For months I had been drowning in pain. I had spent years trying for a baby, breaking my heart over and over again every time a pregnancy test came back negative. And all along my own sister had been sleeping with my husband, getting pregnant with a baby I so desperately wanted. And now she wanted sympathy. No, absolutely not. I wasn't going to comfort her. I wasn't going to make her feel better about the mess she created. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. She kept trying to reach out to me after that, but I ignored her. I blocked Alex's number too. I wanted nothing to do with either of them. I was done. But then my mom told me that Abigail has decided that she is going to put her baby up for adoption. And now I don't know. It's not the baby's fault. I do want to be a mother with or without Alex. I have a good job, so I know I will be able to financially take care of the baby. Any suggestions? Update 1. Hi everyone. So about 2 months ago, I made my original post, and I honestly didn't expect it to blow up the way it did. I just needed to vent, but reading all your comments and support really helped me. It made me feel less alone, and I can't thank you all enough. I do have a few updates for you, but first I want to clear a few things up. A lot of people asked if I hated Abigail's baby, or if I blamed the child for what happened. The answer is no. I have no malice toward that baby. None of this is the kid's fault, and I know that, but that doesn't mean I want to adopt the child either. For a brief moment, I actually considered it. Not because I thought it was a good idea, but because Abigail kept pushing it on me. She made it sound like I was being cruel for saying no, like I was just throwing away my chance at being a mother. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how insane that idea was. How could I raise that child and not be constantly reminded of what happened? What if every time I looked at the baby, all I could think about was the betrayal? What if I resented the child without meaning to? That wouldn't be fair to me or to the baby. So I made my decision. I was not going to adopt Abigail's child. I feel so much better now that I've made that choice. Now, on to the rest of the updates. Alex finally took all his stuff from the house. It took longer than I wanted, but at least he's gone. I don't know where he's living now, and frankly, I don't care. At first, he kept trying to reach out, begging me to take him back, saying he made a mistake, that he still loved me, blah blah blah. But I ignored every single message, and eventually he just gave up. Now though, I have new problems. Since Alex disappeared from my life, Abigail has been all over me. She has not stopped bothering me. At first, it was just texts and calls asking if I had heard from Alex, if I knew where he was, if I could help her find him. I ignored her at first, thinking she'd take the hint, but she didn't. She started showing up at my door. Every other day she'd knock, ring the bell, stand outside like I owed her something. Sometimes I'd open the door just to tell her to get lost. Other times I wouldn't even bother. But she wouldn't stop. She just kept begging. One time she stood there crying, saying she was going to be a single mother, that she didn't know what to do, that Alex was abandoning her just like he abandoned me, that she needed my help. I almost laughed in her face. I told her as calmly as I could that she needed to figure it out on her own, that she made her choices and now she had to live with them. I told her I was done with her. She didn't take that well. She screamed at me, said I was heartless, that I was enjoying watching her struggle. And you know what? Maybe a tiny part of me is satisfied. Not because I want her to suffer, but because she deserves to deal with the fallout of her own actions. This is her mess to fix, not mine. She hasn't stopped showing up at my house, but at this point, I just ignore her. I don't answer the door, I don't engage, I've blocked her number, and I'm honestly considering changing my locks in case she gets any ideas. Update 2. Hi everyone, I know it's only been a week since my last update, but things have taken another turn and I just have to share. So turns out Abigail was already seeing someone when she started hooking up with my husband. I found this out through my mom, who casually dropped it into conversation like it was just another piece of gossip. She told me that Abigail had a boyfriend, or at least someone she was involved with, and that guy apparently had no idea she was cheating on him with Alex. I have no clue who he is because my mom didn't tell me his name, but from what she said, he was not happy when he found out Abigail was pregnant. He came around demanding a paternity test. At first, Abigail refused. She kept saying that she knew the baby was Alex's and that there was no point in taking a test, but this guy wasn't backing down. He kept pushing, telling her that if she really had nothing to hide, she would just take the test. So, eventually, she gave in. The test came back negative. The baby wasn't his. I cannot even begin to imagine what that moment was like for him. Imagine thinking you might be a dad, pushing for a test, and then realizing that not only is the baby not yours, but the woman you were with was cheating on you with your girlfriend's married sister's husband. That's so much mess packed into one situation. I don't have all the details, but I'm assuming he dumped her after that, and good for him. He deserves better. Also, Abigail finally pushed me way too far, and I had to take action. A few days ago, she showed up again. At this point, I was completely done with her nonsense. She had already ruined my marriage, turned my life upside down, and still had the nerve to show up at my house acting like I owed her something. So, I called the police. I didn't even give her a warning this time. I just picked up my phone and called. When the cops arrived, she tried to play the victim. She told them she was just trying to talk to her sister, that she wasn't trying to cause trouble, that she was desperate and needed my help. But the police weren't having it. They told her that she could not come to my house uninvited anymore and that if she continued to harass me, there would be consequences. I think she finally got scared because ever since then, she hasn't come back. For the first time in months, I don't have to hear her knocking at my door, begging me to fix the mess she created. I don't have to listen to her fake soba story or deal with her trying to guilt-trip me into raising her child. Honestly, this whole situation has been insane from start to finish. But I think I'm finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Alex is gone, Abigail is out of my life, hopefully for good, and I'm finally starting to heal. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been almost 7 months since my last update, and honestly I didn't think I'd be making any more. I thought things had finally settled down, that the chaos was behind me. But, of course, life had other plans. A few months ago, Abigail gave birth to a baby girl, my niece. One day, she dropped the baby off at my parents' house, saying she needed to run some errands. My parents, thinking nothing of it, took care of the baby while waiting for her to return, but she never did. At first, they thought maybe she was just running late. Maybe she lost track of time. Maybe something came up, but then hours turned into a full day, then 2, then 3. They called her over and over again, but there was no answer. They went to her apartment. It was empty. They contacted her friends, but no one had seen her. Eventually, they filed a missing persons report. But deep down, I think even they knew the truth that Abigail wasn't missing. She ran away. She just left. She didn't even have the decency to leave a note. Not a single message, no explanation, just poof, gone. Who does that? I mean, I already knew she was selfish, I already knew she was irresponsible, but to abandon her newborn baby without a word, that's a new level of awful. But despite everything, my parents have stepped up. For now, they're taking care of the baby. They didn't hesitate. They just did what needed to be done. I've seen my niece a few times now, and even though I don't want to be her mother, I do know one thing for sure. I will be a damn good aunt to her. She deserves better than the people who brought her into this world. She deserves to be loved. Alex has been completely absent. I don't even know if he knows that Abigail is gone. If he does, he obviously doesn't care. He made it very clear from the beginning that he wanted nothing to do with this baby. And as much as that disgusts me, maybe it's for the best. The last thing that little girl needs is a father who sees her as a burden. The only interaction I had with him was when I called him to get his address to send the divorce papers. He signed them. We didn't have much issue. I didn't ask for anything. The house was already mine. My parents are figuring things out. They're in contact with a lawyer to see what needs to be done legally. They've talked about formally adopting her, but I don't know if they've made a final decision yet. As for me, I'm just taking things one day at a time. I'm still healing from everything that happened. I'm still trying to rebuild my life after the disaster that was my marriage. But I am in a better place than I was a year ago. Thank you all for listening. Your support has meant more to me than I can ever express.